I've decided to make myself a clown-inspired art smock, and I have no idea if this is going to work. As you can see, today I have dressed the part. I actually bought this t-shirt recently off Vinted for this very occasion because I felt like I was going to need a little bit of moral support for this project, which, all cards on the table, is very much outside of my comfort zone. But as I discussed in my most recent video, one of the things that I want to get better at in 2026 is sewing. And I really love the idea of being able to make myself some clothes. I actually have lots of ideas in my head for garments that I would love to own and wear, but to my knowledge those specific items do not exist, or at least they don't exist within a price range that I am willing to pay. So it has been forced upon me to learn how to make them myself, and this specific item is right up there on the top of that list. And now the question is, why do I want this? And the answer to that question is twofold. Number one, I love clowns. I always have, and I imagine that I always will. We will be talking more about this later on in this video, I'm sure. And number two reason is that I have been in the market for an art smock for quite some time and I cannot find one. Although actually, correction, I can find one, and it really is only one that I've been able to find, and it is this one, which is ugly and it costs £62 and I hate it. I actually used to have a really cute painter's smock which I bought when I was an excitable little 19-year-old about to head off to art school, and before the first term started, the university sent out a list of items that we were supposed to buy before we arrived, most of which were art reference books, which I did buy and then proceeded to never once look at. But also on that list was some sort of painting coverall, and because, like I said, I was an excitable little 19-year-old and very much romanticising the idea of art school at that time, I thought that a classic painter's smock would be the correct choice to buy and would help me to fit in seamlessly with my peers. So I went onto eBay and I found a really cute cotton canvas smock with big pockets at the hips, balloon sleeves and buttons all the way down the front, and I thought it was so adorable. But as it turns out, not a single other person on my course had anything remotely similar, so I did look a bit silly, but I loved it. I wish I had a photo of me in it, but after scouring through my iCloud albums, I cannot find a single one, so you're just gonna have to use your imagination. It looked a bit like this, and I kept hold of this thing for years, wearing it as I made all sorts of different art projects and did DIY up until the point that it completely deteriorated and sadly had to be chucked. And since then I have been searching for a suitable replacement, but seemingly the only thing now available on the market is this stupid £62 smock, which, as I've already stated, I hate. So I have decided to make my own, and I actually figure that this will be a good project for me as a novice dressmaker, since it is an item that is designed to be worn at home while getting messy. So imperfect construction and the inevitable mistakes that I will make along the way will not matter too much. But because this is a project that is so out of my comfort zone, I did actually also do something that I don't always do when I make a new project, and that is to make a quick Pinterest board showing some of my general starting point ideas for how I might like this to look. You can see on this board that we have both workers and painters smocks and clown costumes side by side, and in my opinion these two different types of garments actually make kind of perfect bedfellows. They all have very voluminous silhouettes, allowing for ease of movement and the ability to wear other clothing underneath, and they're all also mostly made out of hard wearing kinds of fabrics, thick cottons, linens, canvas, because at the end of the day these are all working garments which can't afford to be too flimsy or easily rippable. And speaking of fabric, I am going to be making my clown smock out of some of the easiest and cheapest fabric available, which is this regular beige calico. I bought 2 meters of this and it cost me just under £10, and I think that this will be more than enough fabric to make this. You can see on the screen now my general idea for my smock. I'm not 100% sure if the finished garment will end up looking exactly like like this. Not only because I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to make it full stop, but also I'm thinking some of the more decorative elements, like the ribbons that I put on the pockets, they might need to be removed for practicality, and I might add some other decorative things on there. The elements on here that I definitely know that I do want and that I will be striving to achieve in this video are the nice voluminous sleeves, the hand smocked neckline, the open back for ease of getting in and out, and some of the fun clowny nods, the scalloped ruff style collar and the pom-poms down the front. And the real beauty of a painting smock is that I know that over time this will be getting more and more covered in decoration and character as I wear it while I'm painting and DIYing. So yes, this is the plan, and now all I need to do is make it, which is easy to say but kind of tricky to do when you're not even sure what the first step is to get started. So for this project I am in need of a little bit of help, for which I'm looking to the sponsor of today's video, Skillshare. My plans for this project have been very much informed by this set of classes by Laura Lamb, in which she shows the full process of hand making a stunning smock style top. And I cannot tell you how thrilled I was to find these classes on Skillshare when I decided to make my own smock, because I find learning so much easier when I can actually watch another human doing something rather than trying to decipher a flat pattern with a load of numbers and written instructions, which I honestly just find incredibly confusing. I've already watched this full set of classes through once, and I know that I will be referring back to it at multiple points along this process, starting now with the necessary evil of figuring out how to measure myself correctly, draw out the flat pattern, and figure out the measurements that I need to cut each of my pieces of fabric to. While I'm not going to be copying Laura's design verbatim, watching this class has given me an invaluable basis of understanding and the confidence to know that I probably can put my own garment together, and for that I want to say a big thank you to her. So if you're like me and there's a new skill that you're wanting to learn but you're feeling a little bit shaky on the confidence side, I highly recommend checking out Skillshare to see what classes they have on offer for your specific needs. Their classes are taught by world-class creatives, so you can feel confident in these skills and techniques that you'll learn, and then you can go forth and apply those skills to your own creative projects. From sewing to illustration to music production, boost your creative output this year, learn from real humans, and give Skillshare a go. The first 500 people to use my link in the description or scan the QR code will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. So thank you so much to Skillshare for sponsoring this video, and now let's get on with the project. So if my calculations are correct, these are the pieces of fabric that I need to cut out. I adapted this from the pattern that she shared in the Skillshare class, making quite a few changes because the shape of the smock that I want to make is quite different to the one that she made in that class. So I'm only hoping and praying that I've done this correctly. I did actually buy a couple of exciting things in preparation for doing this project. Number one is behind me, a lovely dressmaker's dummy, and number two, which is arguably a lot less exciting, but that I am actually really excited for. I got some iron off pens, which I don't think any of you will be interested or impressed by, but I've never had these before and I'm excited by them, so allow me that, and let's get to snipping. Probably should have ironed this first, but this piece of fabric is really big, so it's kind of a pain to iron on my tiny little ironing board, so I'll iron them after they're cut out. It would be lovely to have a massive table to work on, but for now the floor will have to do. This is way more maths than I'd prefer. I've said before that I really am like a slapdash kind of maker, and doing things like measuring things out using rulers and numbers is not my forte. We're making an attempt here, even if it doesn't end up being a successful one. That doesn't seem long enough, but I'm gonna trust my past self and carry on. I need to go 66.5 this way. Yeah. I'm not convinced that that's right, but I'm gonna cut it out anyway. Does this look even? Folding it over revealed my mistakes. I think a couple of millimeters or centimeters off in any direction can't be too big of an issue. Here's hoping. It's the most beautiful rectangle of fabric I've ever seen. So this is our front piece, and now I can use this as a template to cut out the back, which is going to be the exact same length, but it's going to be 4 centimeters wider, because I will later on be cutting it down the middle to have that kind of split back, and I want some extra centimeters on there for finishing off those edges. So I'm going a little bit more than I probably need with the extra 4 centimeters, but better safe than sorry, I think. Done. Now I'll cut out the sleeves, the cuffs and the neckline, and also the underarm gussets, which was an interesting thing that was used in this pattern, which I haven't really heard about before, but apparently it's kind of a classical detail that you might find in smocks, and they're just a little square piece of fabric that goes right in the armpit, and I figured why not use them. And once all of those pieces are cut out, we'll give them all a quick iron and then we can get to pinning. Here are all of my pieces cut and ironed and remarked with my pen, because I hadn't thought that when I ironed them this was obviously going to come off, so I've done that again, and I'm hoping now that that is the tedious, annoying part of this project mostly done, because I hate the measuring kind of thing. It's boring to me and unsatisfying. And now we can move on to the fun bit of actually stitching it together. I've marked on my collar to armpit measurement on both of these front and back pieces, and I'm just going to be hand stitching the sleeves onto these, which you might ask me, why am I hand stitching? And it's because I want to, and also it's the way that the woman in the class did it, so I feel she's given me a level of validity in my preference for the hand sewing. One of these days I will get my machine out in these videos, but that day is not this day. This is the front piece, this is one of the sleeves, and I'm going to pin them together and then stitch about 1 centimeter away from the edge down to that little mark that I've made. At this point in this project I am basically just following the steps that I learnt in that video, because otherwise I'd have no bloody clue what I was doing. But as ever, this video is not a tutorial video. I am not qualified to do a tutorial video on smock making. This is for entertainment only. You're watching me try and do something for the first time. I do very much appreciate having steps to follow, but I also do struggle with following instructions generally. I much prefer making things up myself, so this is an attempt by me to do something a little bit more by the book up until the point that we're going to deviate from this pattern, and then I can start making shit up. Would you look at these lovely tidy stitches? I have improved in hand sewing so much over the last couple of years, just from doing it many times and failing many times. I'm finally capable of stitching in a straight line, which is great. And now we have the top of one of the sleeves attached to the top of the front of our smock. So I'm going to do the same with the other sleeve on the other side of this front panel. Look at how wide the neckline currently is for this smock. It's a little bit worrying, but I know it's gonna zhuzh in a lot when it actually gets smocked, so I am trying not to worry about that. Like I said, I've been working from the pattern in those classes, but I have adjusted the measurements quite a lot, so mine is a good deal wider than hers was, but we're not going to worry about that. Everything is gonna turn out okay. Okay, now we have the tops of both of our sleeves sewn onto the front and back of the smock. So these are the 4 biggest pieces of our fabric sewn together, and it looks gigantic. Is this right? I don't know. I guess that's okay. This neckline is just insanely big. I'm gonna have to do a lot of smocking actually to make this workable, but progress is being made. Now, what is the next step? Just check my list, and the thing I'm doing now is putting these little square gusset panels into the underside of the armpit, which I think is going to be a little bit fiddly. Here is our little gusset, and it's gonna go here. So this is the left sleeve, this is the front panel, and it's getting stitched in along these edges here. I don't think I own any clothing with armpit gussets, but I guess it just gives a little bit more of a loose fit, freedom of movement with the arms, so I don't think I'm going to have a problem with that anyway, because I have a lot of fabric going on here. I'm going to do it anyway because the teacher told me to. So I'll sew it along here and then along here. I'm really hoping that making this will kind of help me internalize some of the reasons why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. Seeing what happens to the garment at each step of the way, I can kind of learn a bit bit more about what the point of each of the steps are. Watching a video to me is definitely one up versus reading written instructions, but I never learn better than when I actually start doing something myself with my own hands. I've been thinking a lot recently about the nature of learning and why I think that looking too much at somebody else's work can be a little bit stifling for your own creativity. It's definitely true in my opinion that comparison is the thief of joy. If you're always looking sideways at how well other people are doing, you never really focus on yourself and get to appreciate your own progress. Now I've got this gusset sewn in on these two front seams here. I believe that the next thing I'm supposed to do is sew up the two edges of the sleeve together and meet that seam where this one is, folding that over like that. I think I'm getting a little bit flustered by how much fabric I've got going on here. This keeps getting really heavy and pulling the whole thing off the side of the desk, but I'm trying really hard to do this properly. I'll sew this up and then we can assess. Okay, that's sewn and I think that looks right. It's definitely a big tube of fabric in which you can slot your arm through, so we can't be far wrong here. And now I need to just flip it over and sew this gusset panel in along these two seams here. And I'm not demonstrating this hugely well because I don't really know what it is I'm doing, but this video is going to get more fun once this basic construction is done, so please bear with me. Finding it hard to be too chatty whilst also being moderately confused. That looks right, so I'll sew up these two edges as well, and then at the same time I'll also sew together the front and back panels of the main body, so we've got one seam running up along the whole thing, and then I think that's the initial construction of one side of the garment complete. My camera's about to die, but I feel like I'm probably done with filming for today anyway, because we don't need any more boring clips of me sewing. So for the rest of today I'm going to finish this side up and then do exactly the same on the other side. Add in the gusset, sew up the sleeve, sew together the front and back, and then when I come back to you tomorrow we can try it on, see how gorgeous it's looking, and then move on to the next steps. It's a new day and here it is so far. The size of the neck opening does continue to worry me, but once you pinch it all in, as it will be when it's smocked, I think it's gonna be fine. Well, at least that's what I'm telling myself. When it's laid out flat like this, it kind of looks a bit like a kimono shape at the minute, with the very squared off sleeves and body. And this is actually it inside out, because over the last couple of evenings, not only did I finish sewing it together, I did actually also finish off all of these inside seams with what I now know is called flat felling, which just meant that I cut one side of the seam allowance in half, rolled the other side over it, and then stitched them down. So we've got really nice clean seams, which I'm pleased about. Should I flip this the right way around and try it on? See how it's looking on the body. Kind of looks the same inside and outside with this type of seam. Pretty pleased with my handiwork here. Okay, you can't tell, but that is now the right way around. And let's slip it over the head. Ugh. Full tit exposure, and same again on the back. This is the current state of things. I could probably fit another 3 of myself into this neckline, but the size on the body I think is about right. It's baggy without being too baggy. It does kind of have the quality of like a homemade Joseph costume for the school nativity, but that's not a bad thing. Quite pleased with this sleeve. I think once this is gathered in at the cuff, it will be nice and balloony, though you can't see that because the other sleeve is in the way. So yeah, that's where we're up to. And today I'm hopefully going to start smocking this, but first thing I need to do is get this back inside out, and I'm going to cut the full back piece straight down the middle because this is going to have an open back with closures at the top, and I think before I smock would be the correct time to do that. So I'll quickly cut this back panel in two, roll over the edges and stitch those down so they're nice and neat and aren't going to fray, because one of the problems with calico is that it is is quite frayy. I'm having a lot of that going on at the neckline at the minute, and I want to minimize that as much as possible. Also, I do say I'm going to do this quickly, but nothing with hand sewing is particularly quick. But this is a nice mindless task, so it's a good way to start the day. I do appreciate that calico holds its shape quite well when you fold it. You don't even really need to use heat to press it. It just kind of stays where you want it to go, which is why I guess dressmakers use it so much for planning patterns and whatnot. So I'm going to spend the next 30 minutes or so just finishing off this slip and transforming it from this to this. Lovely and neat. This is the inside. That's what it will look like from the front. Pretty pleased with that. And now we can start prepping to smock this massive neckline. First, let's talk quickly about smocking itself. I made this little test piece of some different smocking stitches a couple of weeks ago now in preparation for doing this project. You can see we've got straight lines here. This is kind of a diamondy pattern, and then the bottom is a wavy smock stitch. And this is the one that I think I like the best and that I want to use in this specific project. Smocking is the process of gathering fabric into tight little pleats and then attaching those together at the front with a decorative stitch. And it's a way to give a non-stretch fabric like this calico the ability to be a little bit stretchy. So I imagine that it's a great technique to get used to for a variety of different projects. This test piece here is the first time I've ever done it, so I am by no means an expert, and this smock is going to be the second time I've ever done it. One of the reasons why I wanted to give this particular process a go is because I have lovely memories of a specific dress that I had as a child, which I actually called my mum to see if she could send me a photo of me wearing it, so I'll pop that up on screen. It's just a little kind of floral classic 90s style summer dress, and it had a really lovely smock section on the lower chest stomach area, and I remember so vividly as a kid thinking that this dress was the most beautiful thing that I'd ever owned, and maybe in the future I'd like to have a go at actually trying to recreate this dress, but for now we're going to be using this in this project instead. And I'm hoping that the gathering that we see on my little test piece is going to be the remedy that this smock needs to fix this crazy huge neckline and give it a nice kind of floaty, flowy shape as it falls down. So now we can get to working on it. And the first thing I need to do to get my smock ready to be smocked is to make a ruler, which I'm going to use as a guide for my initial gathering stitches. And I'm going to be doing this out of this little scrap piece of card. What I need is a grid of dots that are evenly spaced out, and for my little test piece here you can see faint shadow of the old dots on there. I did these dots all 1 centimetre apart from each other, which worked fine, but it does mean that we have quite chunky heavy pleats on the back, which I think will be a little bit too much along the neckline of this smock. So I've decided that for this piece I'm going to reduce the distance between each dot to 6mm. So what I'm going to do on my piece of card here is line up a ruler and mark a little notch at 6mm increments along the whole length of this card until it looks like this. Now I'm going to extend each of these lines downwards and then measure 6mm down the length and cut this off so that we'll have a skinny little striped ruler. Here's my little ruler, and now I can use this to help me map out my grid onto my actual fabric, or so says the lady on Skillshare. This isn't how I did it when I did this test piece. I just kind of used a regular ruler and plotted them out, but it meant that my dots weren't perfectly lined up vertically. I'm hoping that this will mean that I have a much more even grid. So saying that, I didn't take particularly great care to make sure that it was perfect. I feel like a certain level of approximation when we're talking about millimeters here is not important, so I don't really know what I'm doing too much, so maybe it is really important. I don't think so though. Right. Now I can go back to my very fun iron off pen and grab my smock and lay it down. I'm gonna start off with one side of my back, and I don't want to go too close to the edge because of the issue with fraying, so maybe I'll start a centimetre from the edge, pinning it on to the beautiful background noise of the bin men. And once I'm happy with how straight it is, I'll start using my guide to dot out all the little dots that I want around the neckline. And I am well aware that this specific task is probably going to take me a long time. I haven't quite decided how many rows of the smocking I want, so I'm going to start out by doing at least 3 lines of the dots all the way around, and then I'll see what I think. That looks pretty straight. Time to dot wherever there is a line, top and bottom. One of my friends is a fashion designer, and he was making a lot of smocked things for a while. Maybe I should have spoken to him for this project. At the time, I don't think I quite appreciated how much time he was needing to put into that. So now that I do, I'm even more impressed than I was before. It's amazing the things that people learn how to make, and the ingenuity of people throughout the ages for figuring out how to make the things that they wanted to make. Honestly, without looking up how to do this, I would have had no clue. So I'm very grateful. Okay, about 6 episodes of and 1 quite bad hand cramp later, we have our dots completed. I ended up going for 6 rows of dots because I thought that was about the right depth that we're looking for. No more specific reason than that. And now we can start gathering, which I'm going to be doing by sewing a thread in and out of each of these dots, going all the way around the top of the smock, knotting them on both ends. So I'm going to do this 6 times, and this is going to take quite a lot more time. First row done, only 5 more to go, and I will catch up with you when we're ready to gather. It took a long time, but it's done. 6 lovely rows of even stitching. It's kind of a bit depressing that I'm going to have to pull these out eventually, because look how neat they are. I'm really proud of myself. Although I did mess up on this bit. I got a little knot in the thread, which for the life of me I could not undo. So I'm hoping I'll be able to pull this one from this point when I gather it, so that I didn't have to restitch the whole row, because it took ages. The sun is slowly going down now, so I don't have much time left on this today, but I think it would be a shame to finish off the day without doing this gathering, because I really want to see all of my hard work hopefully pay off. So now I'm just going to start pulling these loose threads through, slowly letting the fabric gather up. Need to be quite gentle with this so that we don't get any breaks, and just pull them along. It actually feels really nice. This is the payoff I've been waiting for this whole time. Okay, that's about half of it done, and it's really looking a lot more like a neckline now, which is exciting. Actually, really good news. As I've been pulling this along, that knot that I had in the thread seems to have unknotted itself, which is a relief. And this looks pretty good. From an elephant-sized neck hole to a regular human one. Let's quickly try this on. I am pretty pleased with that. I've got it on back to front at the minute just for ease of putting it on. Actually, should I have it this way round with the opening at the front? Don't know. Let me try it the other way. I do like it this way too. I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to take a bit of time to mold this over, which is lucky for me because for today I have run out of time. So I'll be back with a clearer idea of what we're aiming for, and we can move on to the smocking portion of this in a few days' time. Here be my smock, and I have decided that I'm going to continue with the original plan of keeping the opening to this at the back. I just think it will work better for practicality, and there's also nothing stopping me making another version of this in the future with the opening at the front. We are very close to being able to do the actual smocking stitches on this, which is the bit that I'm looking forward to, but I still have one more step to do before I can do that. that, and that is to attach the neckline to the top of this to stop this edge fraying anymore, and also to keep the gathers somewhat in place. And I think, looking at this now, that I've cut this neckline piece a little bit too short. So I just drape that round. It is a bit short currently. So I think what I'm going to do, rather than recut this, is actually use some of this trim that I've had for ages and that I have been trying to use up, because it's a good match for colour, and it also means that we don't have to roll it over as much because the edge of this won't fray. So all I'm going to do is get the gathers all the way around somewhat even, and then stitch this on so that we've got a nice finished edge. And I'm going to do that quickly off camera while watching the new America's Next Top Model documentary on Netflix, because I want to see what Tyra's got to say for herself. Okay, that's done, and I think it looks alright. It's nice to have a finished off neckline here so I don't have to worry about loose threads anymore. And now we can finally start our smocking stitches. And for these you can use a thicker embroidery style thread or a contrasting colour to accentuate the design, but for this project I'm just going to be using the same thread that I've used for the rest of it, because I want this to be quite a subtle detail, and also we are going to have a clowny collar over the top of it a lot of the time, so I don't know that it's worth doing a different colour. And like I said, I'm going to be doing a wavy style stitch on this, starting by making a nice secure knot at the back of one of the wells of these pleats, bringing the thread up to the front and then stitching the fronts of each of the pleats together in this little wavy pattern. And I'm taking my time on this and really enjoying the process of doing all of these little individual stitches. And while I do that, I thought we could have a quick little history lesson all about smocks. Smocks have an interesting story in working class British history. They were a popular form of rural workwear between the mid-18th to early 20th century, and were handmade garments made from inexpensive, sturdy fabrics. They were designed to be big and voluminous so that they could cover a worker's clothing to prevent it from getting damaged as they worked, which was very important at the time, since clothing in general was much more expensive and difficult to replace than it is today. The smocking stitches themselves were used to manage the volume of the garment and also provided a certain level of waterproofing, which was obviously very useful for outdoor labourers, particularly here in Britain where we get a lot of rain. As well as being working garments, smocks were also a popular form of Sunday best. These would be a smarter version of a working smock, which could be worn as an overcoat while attending church and spending the day with family. And unsurprisingly, these types of smocks typically had more decorative smock stitching than those used at work, and these are the ones that you're more likely to find in museum collections today, since they've obviously survived in much greater numbers than working garments have. As the Industrial Revolution touched more and more places in Britain and rural work began to depend more heavily on machinery, smocks fell out of favour with workers in the fields, which makes a lot of sense since a voluminous garment like a smock could obviously pose quite a safety hazard around all of those moving parts. You don't want to get that big sleeve caught in a piece of equipment, because you could easily lose an arm and then lose your ability to work at all. As they fell out of fashion in rural Britain in the late 19th century, where the wearers had been predominantly male, smocks instead became popular with artists of all genders, though particularly women, as they offered the wearer comfort and protection from paint and clay and dust while working in their studios. I also found an interesting paragraph in one of the articles that I read about smocks, so I'm just going to read that for you now. After its decline as a working garment in the countryside, the smock didn't disappear because other people began appropriating it. In the late 19th and early 20th century, Liberty stores made smocks for middle-class children who would be dressed by their parents as little farmers or foresters. The rational dress movement, led by people like Mrs. Oscar Wilde, and by the way, I want to say here, her name was Constance Wilde, so I'm not sure why we're not giving her proper credit here, but I digress, adopted the smock as a kind of anti-fashion statement because you didn't have to wear a corset under it. We've obviously seen smock-inspired silhouettes become popularised in fashion at multiple times since then too, most notably in the late 1960s and 70s, when again the loose flowing shape fit in well with the women's liberation and flower power counterculture youth movements of the time. So a smock is a garment steeped in historical and revolutionary relevance, led by a need for practicality and adapted at different times in tune with fashion. And I am very excited to have my own smock to wear. So let's see where we're at with that now, shall shall we? Here it is. I actually ended up only doing 2 rows of this wavy smocking. I was going to do a 3rd row, but then I tried it on and I felt like the way that it fell just with these top 2 rows was the right amount of gathering, so I left it, which was also a big relief because it was a slow process. And I think it looks really pretty, but I'm trying to keep in mind that it's going to be covered up by the collar anyway, so perhaps the whole thing was unnecessary. But an artistic practice is just that. It's about practice, and now I have a little bit more practice doing hand smocking. Here it is from the back. Now what I need to do is pull out all of these red threads because we don't need these here anymore. I've already cut the knots off the ends, so in theory I should be able to pull them through. But that's not working, so I'll probably have to chop them at multiple intervals and then pull them out that way. Also, just to say, today I'm actually very ill, which is really annoying because I seem to not be able to not catch a cold this year. This winter it's really felt like I've been ill more than I've been well, and it's really starting to get to me. I don't know if I need to go to the doctor to get some blood tests because my immunity seems to be terrible. And while I do want to carry on working on this project today, I don't really want to chat that much because my throat is kind of painful and I also have to keep stopping to blow my nose. So I think what I'm going to do from this point onwards is just voice over all of the things that I'm doing today when I'm feeling a little bit less terrible. So let's cut to that now. So I finished pulling out all of these red threads, leaving just our 2 rows of smocked stitching at the top, which looked really pretty and I was feeling quite pleased with myself. I tried the smock on again and realised that it wasn't fitting exactly as I wanted it to, and this is where my making things up as I go nature really kicked in. I felt like the open back was a little bit too open and was going to annoy me when I sat down, and I also thought that the whole thing wasn't really long enough to be a serviceable painting coverall, so I decided to add in a few more panels of fabric, one in the back and a couple at the bottom to create some more volume and coverage. I decided to sew the back panel in on both sides of the slit, somewhat undoing the trouble I'd gone to cut the thing in half to begin with, but also creating more of an interesting shape as the piece I'd cut was kind of a trapezium type thing rather than a straight rectangle. I figured if I sewed it in part way down the back, I could slip the smock on and off over my head and still leave a keyhole detail and room at the top for a fun bow or fastening of some sort. And it was while I was figuring this all out that I realised that I had made a grave and very dim mistake. I'd forgotten to flip the garment the right way around before I started smocking, so I was left with my nice smocked stitches being on the inside of the neckline instead of the outside. This was extremely humbling and a tiny bit soul crushing, and it meant that I then had to decide whether to keep the smock inside out so that the smocking would be on the outside but with worse looking seams, or to flip it the right way around and have nice clean visible seams and an awkward looking neckline. And ultimately I decided to do it this way since nice seams all over just seemed more important, and I've always known that the smocking was going to end up being mostly covered by the clown collar in the end anyway, so it's not too much of a loss. And on the bright side, the inside of the neckline looks lovely. But yeah, I was pretty pissed off about that, and once all of these pieces were sewn on, I was kind of over it for the day. I was still feeling really ill, so I went away to mend my pride and tried to decongest with some nasal spray and ibuprofen. And then I came back the next day wearing the exact same outfit as the day before and feeling even more unwell after a night of very little sleep and lots of nose blowing. And I started this day by hemming the bottom of the smock, which took ages, and then I moved on to attaching the cuffs. And for these, once again I realised that the fabric I'd originally cut wasn't quite big enough, so I recut those, bubbled up the sleeves and sewed them on. And after that was done, I turned the camera off and laid down on the sofa, spending the rest of the day attaching some pockets and feeling sorry for myself. And that brings us to today, where we are looking like this. And I hope you'll agree that it is looking like a serviceable painter's smock at this point. And it ticks basically all of the practical boxes that one might want of a painter's smock. I added some little black buttons to secure the cuffs. And I also made the pockets double layered, which I'm not sure if I'm going to get any practical use out of that, but I did it anyway. And at this point, we are nearly done with this project, though not quite quite, because as we all know, this isn't just supposed to be a painter's smock, it is also supposed to be clowny. So that's what we're going to be working on today. Starting off, I think, by covering up this mess of a neckline with a lovely ruffled collar. And I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to make this, but my initial thought is just to cut a long rectangle of some fabric and fold it over into about the right width that I want. Give it an iron, and then I'll just play around by pinning it onto my dummy. Don't want it to be too bulky and ruffly, because then I think it will be a little bit in the way sometimes if I'm making things. That level of ruffle seems about right. And by the way, I love this dummy so much. It was kind of an investment purchase that I bought myself for Christmas after doing a lot of research, because I've been wanting one of these for ages. The one I ended up buying was this one, if you're interested. I know I could have gotten a cheaper one, but I decided to spend a little bit more money because I wanted to have a good one with like adjustable sizing and a nice sturdy wooden frame so that I could keep it for a lifetime. And I'm so glad that I got it in time for this project, because it's made making this much easier, and I can already tell that I'm going to be making lots of fun things on her in the future, so I'm excited for that too. I do still need a name for her though, because at the minute she is without one. So if you have any good ideas for that, please do let me know down in the comments. Okay, I'm pretty happy with how this is looking now that it's pinned. I left this back section kind of open here because I want to leave enough space for that big bow that I put on my illustration, because I do still want to add that on. And now I need to stitch this thing onto the smock. And while I do that, I figure it's a good time for me to talk about why it is that I like clowns so much, because I know not everybody does, and they're actually quite a big phobia for some people. So consider this my argument in favour of clowns. So first off, aesthetically, I think clowns just look great. From like an understated Pierrot to the gaudiest, most exaggerated, colourful circus clown, you cannot deny that the fashion is iconic, which is why so many people choose to dress up as clowns for Halloween or other fancy dress occasions. It's literally a style that anyone can look and feel good in. A classic kind of clown costume is comfortable, it's genderless, it's size inclusive. So yeah, clowns are very PC. And clowning itself is such an underrated art form. The ability to make people laugh really is a gift. And I think doing physical comedy is particularly impressive. Lots of clowns don't even speak, but they can hold an audience's attention just through their body movements and facial expressions. I think it's something that looks like it would be easy to do, but it's actually all so perfectly choreographed. Like falling over on cue or being strategically hit by something. These are all things that are learned and rehearsed, just like any other form of acting. And I think making a fool out of yourself just to make children laugh is kind of a noble trade. In a circus, the clown is often the glue that holds the whole production together. They keep people entertained and distracted while the other acts and props are being set up and switched out. And they usually have loads of different skills under their belt, from juggling to acrobatics to magic tricks, so they're multi-talented. My gran used to take us to the circus every summer, from when we were kids to when we were teenagers, and even as an angsty hormonal 16-year-old, I always just loved the whole thing, and I always had lots of fantasies about running away with the circus and getting to befriend the performers and learning all of their tricks from them. Also, and I have mentioned this in videos before, but my mum dabbled in some low-level clownery when we were younger, and she started performing at friend and family birthday parties, and even though she never hit the big time with it, I love so much that she gave that a try. I think it's so cool. She bought so many costumes and props and juggling stuff, and this unicycle that I now own and have no clue how to ride. So we were always kind of spoiled for dressing up clothes and fun things to play with, which is pretty aspirational if you ask me. Also, when I was a teenager, I had a crush on this boy who went to a different school to me, but I used to see him around town and I fancied him because he was really lanky with ginger hair and like a very beautiful face. And then one week I was doing work experience at the local like arts centre place, and I was just there wiping down tables, having no clue that he was nearby, and then I looked up and he just cycled past me on a unicycle juggling some balls, and it turned out he was doing a circus skills class there. Basically at that point my love of clowns and my love of this boy collided and became even more potent. So yeah, I love clowns for all of those above reasons, and actually a lot more too that I'm not going to go into because otherwise I'll be talking for ages, though not quite as long as I could talk about my love of magicians, but that's a topic for another video, and I will report back when this collar is fully sewn on. Done! And she's looking cute. Sewing this on did take me literally hours because it was a bit fiddly and I wanted to make sure that it was on there really securely and also neatly, but I'm happy with it. It's definitely looking more clowny now than it was. And now I can pop it back onto our mannequin, and I want to get going on the bow on the back. First thing I'm going to do for this is make a couple of long ribbons with some more of our spare calico, folding them over, ironing them in place and quickly stitching them together. Like so. 2 lovely long ribbons ready to go. But I'm feeling pretty worn out now and I don't want to rush these last few things, so I'm going to rest for tonight and then come back tomorrow to finish up this smock. It's smock finishing day, and today is all about the final details. I'm going to start by folding and stitching our 2 ribbons onto each side of the back panel, and I'll also be installing this nice black hook and eye fastening at the centre of the bow to keep the top of our smock closed. I have been very tempted throughout working on this project to add all sorts of extra decorative bits and bobs to this thing, but ultimately I decided that simplicity is better since this is supposed to be a working garment. So I am going to add one tiny extra decorative element to this bow, which is a BF signature at the ends of the ribbons made out of some black felt. Okay, this looks adorable, and that is the back done. Now I did decide against those bows on the pockets on the front just for practicality reasons. I thought that they were going to get in the way, but of course any good clown smock does require pom-poms down the front. That is a non-negotiable. So I'm going to quickly whip up a few of those with my nifty pom-pom maker thing. I impulse bought these from the works last year knowing that at some point they would come in handy, and look at me now. I'm going to use the smallest one that I have because I don't want these pom-poms to be huge, and I'm sure you all know how these are made. I just wind some black wool around this thing until it's chunky enough to be substantial, snip it all in half, secure the pieces together with another length of wool and give it a little haircut. 1, 2, 3 nice evenly sized pom-poms, which I can now stitch onto the front of my smock. And it is done! Look at it, I'm so pleased. Now I just need one more night to give this a good iron and tart myself up a little bit, and then we can do the final try on reveal in the morning. So I will see you then. My transformation from regular human woman to crafty clown is now complete. I dyed my hair last night because I'm dedicated, and I've also made an attempt at some clowny makeup, but please don't look too closely at it because I'm not a makeup artist. I whipped up this hat the other day from some spare card and calico and felt, and I do think it adds a certain something to this whole ensemble, though admittedly I probably won't be wearing it every time I'm doing painting, but it's nice to have the option. All in all, I am so pleased with how this thing came together, and I absolutely loved the process of making it. Even on the days when I was feeling really unwell, I learned a lot, I improved a lot, and I made a few mistakes along the way. But it's come out, I think, better than I could have imagined, and I know that it's going to get a lot of use. Actually, now I'm kind of in the mood to do some painting, so it works. Thank you so much for watching this video. I do hope that you've enjoyed it. If you're new here and you enjoy crafting and silly things, please consider subscribing and leave me a comment to let me know what you wear when you make art, and also your general thoughts and feelings about clowns. So try and keep those nice because you know that I'm emotionally invested. And now all of that has been said, all that is left to say is bye.